And so take 9/11, for example. This is something that it's important for researchers to look at. We know it wasn't as we were told it was. 19 Arab hijackers did not turn the United States into a full-blown police state with drones overhead. But what do we see here? The result of 9/11, we have seen a global police state. We have seen this, the Muslims are going to get you, be used as an excuse in China, in India, in Russia, in England and throughout Europe, even Africa, and the United States. And I'm sorry if I missed out on other countries, but this is a global effort to use fear to control people. So I think the truth of what we're seeing is all these super states having already created their new world order, they just haven't told us yet, and they're still pushing this fallacy that we're under different economic systems and that they're struggling over resources, and that China and Russia obviously have to respond to increased U.S. imperialism. And we're going to see more of that as time goes on. This is no surprise to you and others that are watching. So what is this going to lead to? The new 9/11 will not be the United States attacked by supposedly Al-Qaeda. If Mitt Romney becomes the president, I don't see any evidence that Obama has to remain the president to continue this new world order agenda. I think his time is up, but I could be wrong. Mitt Romney seems to fit the aggressive mold, the way he talks aggressively about China and about Russia. But who's he to talk? Through his company, Bain Capital, he has funded China's surveillance society apparatus. And a lot of this information came out about 2 to 3 months ago. Meanwhile, I'm in Texas, Governor Rick Perry has allowed the Huawei Corporation, I hope I announced that correctly, which has been identified as the Chinese company involved in espionage and cyber attacks against the Pentagon. Somehow or another, 20 miles from me, literally, Plano has their U.S. headquarters right here in Texas. While there are Chinese cadets training in small towns outside of Houston, Texas, along the coast. So something is being planned at the highest levels, and the new 9/11, now that all this stuff's being set up and they're just getting ready for someone to light the dynamite, the greatest threat that I think we could see is Mitt Romney or the next president starting another war and killing a very large amount of people. Because that will turn the whole world against the United States in the way that the whole world was turned against Afghanistan and Iraq. And we know how easy it is to do it. And while people want to run their mouth, I would say, about how big and bad they are because they have a firearm, take note about what happened with Iraq. They came in by air and they disrupted their grid and they went door to door and they terrorized people, and ultimately many women have been raped and involved, put into the human trafficking operations, which we know that the UN is very much involved in. So before saying that we're fully ready for the things that are to come, we need to be fully educated as to the things that are being planned for us, and I think this is a very likely scenario. And having said that, I'm not someone that's trying to push fear. I'm trying to just simply educate that I see clues that this is where they are trying to take us. So I think that we can be proactive, loving, compassionate individuals and try to help people prepare for these things that are to come without falling into the box of hysteria, paranoia. You know, I think there's a lot of love that comes from trying to warn people.
Well, I agree. I think those are great insights on China. I've followed some of your stories about the Chinese troops being trained here, things like that. Very interesting. But yeah, I guess one aspect of the truth movement that perhaps is lacking, in my opinion, is preparation for the unexpected. The unexpected, because everybody's giving you, like, this is the scenario that's happening, when I think some of the best advice would be ready for anything, be whole in yourself, be at peace with yourself, be ready for anything. So again, this is preparedness. What is true preparedness in your opinion?
On a side note, and then I want to get into preparedness, we really don't know why DHS is buying 750 million rounds of ammunition, hollow point. Okay, we just because that we only have so many ideas as to why, it doesn't mean that those truths are the ultimate truth. And this is coming to me very strong. We don't know what's going on. Now, I understand that you get into esoteric issues, as do I. And this elite, according to the symbolism we're seeing in the Olympics and other forms of symbolism that we're seeing, Tom Horn, I recommend his book, Apollyon Rising 2012, where he hypothesizes that the founding fathers knew that 2012 would be significant. and that they encrypted 2012 on the Great Seal of the United States on our dollar bill, and that by 2012 that they would be awaiting the return of Apollyon, which is also likened to Satan or El Diablo or Lucifer or some sort of extraterrestrial. We all have different names to define this evil that may or may not be operating on the earth or above the earth or in the earth. But we know these elite characters are preparing for something, and I think that before we just throw it out as just esoteric, occult, goblin boblin, that we keep an open mind. Now, true preparedness to me, I opened up a survival store, by the way, in Portland, Oregon before I left, and I left that organization, the Portland Preparedness Center, because the two individuals that involved me in that were only interested in using me and my voice to make money for them. And because I had vowed off working at restaurants, which I actually had bussed tables for the first 5 years of doing the show. So I'm living two different realities. Of course I'm going to try to better my situation and help these gentlemen out and help people get prepared. But I also stepped back from some of that hardcore, we must be prepared stuff, because I realized that they were not actually connected with spirit. They weren't really people that were believers in divine protection, that if you do good things on this planet, maybe something out there has your back. They were very much obsessed with going underground and all of these things, and I think that's why we had a disconnect, and that's why I decided that I would go my own way. But I also realized that they weren't really giving people true preparedness solutions and answers outside of buy my product and buy MSG-laden Mountain House products, which is not the healthiest food storage that you want to get. So I've interviewed about 10 to 15 people about preparedness, and I realized that when people talk about it, they're talking about through the lens of what they know. And men can be very egotistical, so they're telling you, this is the answer and this is the way that it goes. The basics are the basics. You want to prepare for a situation where you have to stay in your house or you may have to evacuate. And you're going to have to prepare equally for both scenarios. But some of this information is repetitive. The most important thing is water. You can only go so long, about a couple days without water, a couple weeks without food, sometimes longer, I believe, if your body is prepared for such things. We know that yogis can go for long periods of time because of their level of consciousness. So I would recommend things like quinoa, things like amaranth, things like garbanzo beans, things like mung beans for bulk organic options. They're going to be a lot more wholesome than just getting a bunch of wheat and just getting a bunch of rice, white rice, that's been bleached and genetically modified. These are the answers that I see other people doing because they're actually not very educated into how people eat around the world. We have to think outside the box of the Anglo-Saxon American diet, because it's through this Anglo-Saxon American diet that a lot of people have diabetes, that a lot of people have diseases right now. So we need to think about mindful preparedness and start picking foods and eating healthier right now. This is not about tomorrow. This is about making an energetic shift in consciousness and being responsible for the foods that we eat, and not just saying we're a truther while we drink Coca-Cola and eat McDonald's. So these are things to be implemented now, and these are foods that we need to be eating now as we rotate through our food supply. Water is important. There's many different filters that you should get from Berkey type systems, but also learning how to do it yourself. Learn how to filter water with buckets. Learn about the power of herbs, things like olive leaf extract, which can literally purge out viruses from your system. It's even recommended for HIV patients, people with STDs. What does that tell you? There's something about this, the power of the olive, which is even mentioned in the Bible. And so I woke up to things like this during the swine flu scare. Okay, so I see they're pushing vaccines. I know it's a scare, but I also know that people are getting sick through something that may have been released. And some people aren't getting sick. Why is that? What is the power to our immune system? And so we just can't be concerned about all these things that they're doing to us. We have to be aware of some of the solutions. And ultimately, we have to think outside the box of fleeing the United States and assuming that we're going to be exterminated. I would make plans, but I would not talk about those plans on Facebook. And I would certainly not talk about having a war with the U.S. government and get yourself flagged. If you're not ready to play the role of Rambo, you best keep your mouth shut and not try to play tough guy, because all you're doing is just placating your own ego and trying to impress your friends on Facebook and YouTube. It has no basis in reality. Joel Skousen, I recommend his book, Strategic Relocation. And his recent interview, you guys can look that up online. He talks about the top 10 cities that he believes are going to be attacked. I left Portland for a reason because of its proximity to the West Coast and the other things that we talked about. It's only 60 miles out from the ocean, so I think it has a lot of strategic issues there, and also why they did a lot of martial law drills in Portland. But Texas, where I live now, is obviously going to be a target. This is a major financial center. And so we want to be thinking about the best places to be in our own geographic areas, because to think you're going to run up into Canada because you think the U.S. is the ultimate police state, I would take a look at some of the protests in Montreal, in Toronto, and you'll see how brutal it is there. It's just like Occupy. So start thinking practically about what your plans are going to be. Develop community if you can, a group of people that are going to meet at a certain place. But don't spend your whole life in disappointment if you can't find that community. Because I have been around people for years that have talked about wanting to build their community, but ultimately, back to this theme that we're all just humans here, and we all have egos. Sometimes it's difficult to do that, and that's also why we're in the situation we're in. We have all the power we need to start developing local currencies, to go outside the box of just strictly preparing for all hell to break loose. We could be building loving bubbles where we're countering the dark grid reality, and we're creating the reality that we have the ability to create. And so these are things that I would keep in mind when you think about preparedness. Holistically, what does that really mean? To go into a world where you may not have power for a very long time because a solar flare or something else has disrupted the whole electric grid, or an EMP. And I think that's ultimately what we're preparing for. We're preparing for a situation where our food supply will be cut off because we're not going to have the ease and flow of oil going back and forth. And this is where the meme, I think, of the zombie apocalypse is actually coming from. When people don't eat, the body will feed off of its own muscle before it feeds off of fat. But what is the brain? The brain is, I think, a combination of the two. The brain will become smaller and smaller and smaller, thus people that aren't eating are going to become zombie-like and perhaps cannibals. And we know through the historical record in China, in just the last 50, 60 years, we saw cannibalism there. And we still see it to a certain degree in North Korea. So I think that's what we're facing. We're facing a situation where the people are going to be cut off from the very resources that keep them alive. So that's ultimately what I think people are preparing for. And I don't think that it's going to be a zombie apocalypse in the way that people think. I think also there's a lot of propaganda out there concerning the zombie apocalypse, and that's why it's in the movies, and that's why it's in these video games, to instill fear of other men and other women that something's going to happen where we have to shoot each other because we're afraid they're going to infect us with some virus. So although it's very cute to some people to joke about the zombie apocalypse, we got to question why it's been injected into our collective consciousness.
Yeah, well, it's a very real allegorical thing, the zombies. It's an allegory of the mob, the angry mob. That's what it is. It always has been. If you go back to even the original Night of the Living Dead, it's when an event happens where people are put into a survival situation, people in their survival instinct, in their lower id region of their personality, will end up destroying themselves. So it's always been an allegory for that. And so I find it very interesting that the zombie concept is being pushed so much in popular culture now. But our goal is to prevent that sort of thing from happening. Or if we can't prevent it, from the way to prevent it for you personally is to empower your own mind so that if you are put into a survival situation of whatever type, that you will be able to handle it intelligently.
Right.
Correct?
And it's important to separate, because we do create our own reality in this world, whether we're willing to believe that or not. It's always happening. It's happening. It's you're creating your reality going, I'm going to go out and I'm going to interview these people, and I'm going to get to the truth, and it's going to get out there. And it is, as has it been with my case and also Freeman. I want to give him credit as well, and all the other fantastic minds that are out there, Max Egan, Bruce Lipton. I can go on and on to the people that I have met that have given greater truths as to what's going on. And that's what's important, because we have to separate where we're going to be as we create our reality from the